This is a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District.
Good evening, everyone, and again, welcome to this very, very important conversation and important event. I'm going to start things off. We have a very distinguished panel of speakers tonight to present to you, and we appreciate everybody joining us. This is an essential community conversation regarding sexual assault. I'm Kevin McGowan. I'm the superintendent of schools in Brighton. And again, it's my pleasure to welcome you to what is such an important conversation. And we have many partners here with us tonight who are going to be presenting. We're going to start out with those presentations from Restore, Bavona, the Brighton Police Department, and our school district, and then spend the second half of our time together talking about your questions using the chat. And this is an important distinguishing direction I'd like you to think about if you're participating here tonight. In the chat, we would ask you to ask any specific questions that perhaps might be personally identifiable. They are only visible to the panelists so that anybody else watching does not view something that could be, again, personally identifiable, hurtful, etc. And we have provided in the chat box a link to a thought exchange around your suggestions, around your thoughts, your other questions, your comments that might be more general and not personally identifiable. And we'll spend some time towards the end of the evening going through those and have that information essentially memorialized so we can also send that out to the community and have responses to that. A big part of tonight is not just to provide you with information about how these situations are handled and what kind of support is available, but for us to learn as well and to be better and continuously improve our practice. And we'll learn a lot in the panel discussion about how to do that and based on your feedback. So feel free throughout the evening to enter thoughts there. We'll take a break around that point towards the end for you to have a few minutes to go into that exchange and add additional thoughts, or we can gather your feedback as well. So to that point about a distinguished panel, I'd like to tell you who's on the screen and ask them if they could just give a quick wave. We have Mary Jo Marino, who's the Director of Education Outreach from Restore. Julia DeLuca, who is an advocate, a K-12 advocate at Restore. Deb Rosen, the Executive Director of the Bavona Child Advocacy Center. Tom Hall, the high school principal at Brighton High School. Betsy Balling-Paddock, who has the longest title possible, and it was just really more a group of descriptors. She's been an assistant principal at the high school, the middle school, and is essentially assistant director for mental health and alternative programs at Brighton and works with counselors K-12. Jenny Vigiani, who's the BHS Counseling Department Coordinator and a counselor extraordinaire, and Captain Mike DeShane from the Brighton Police Department joining us as well. So thanks to all of you. I think one key aspect that we would like to point out and continuously remind folks of is that this is a partnership. This is a group of people who deeply, deeply care about outcomes for our children, our families, and how we love and support them in every circumstance. And I appreciate all of you coming together tonight to provide this information and provide that level of care and support. This conversation started as a result of events that were brought to our attention in the district and a concern that was very clear amongst community members about how we handle these situations and what supports are available and what else we might be able to do. And we want to make sure that we're engaged in that conversation and listening deeply while providing also information to people about what does happen, what can happen, and what supports are available. So thanks for continuing this conversation with us. And again, to our partners for joining us as well. I'm going to stop my screen share and ask Mary Jo and Julia to jump in from Restore. Each group will take about 10 minutes to present, and then we'll dig into the feedback portion. And again, the two directions that are key, or the one direction and the two places for you to add feedback. One would be in the chat with things that might be more personally identifiable, so those aren't visible to attendees. And then in the thought exchange for information that everybody could see and discuss and understand the type of feedback that we're receiving. We absolutely want to both protect individuals, but also gather your feedback and have that be an open conversation with everyone. Mary Jo and Julia, take it away, and you're able to share your screen when you're ready.
All right, I am pulling that up now. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. We do not need to share sound. And that should be up. Can everyone see that okay? We will see. Okay, that should be good. Mary Jo, you want to? Thank you.
There we go. Now we can see it. Yeah, thank you, Julia. So yes, hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kevin, so much for bringing us together this evening and for starting this very important and continuing on with this very important and needed conversation. As Kevin mentioned, my name is Mary Jo Marino. I'm the Director of Education and Outreach for Restore Sexual Assault Services. My colleague Julia and I will take the next few moments to talk a little bit about Hotline. There we go. So I will share more about Restore and all the services available in a moment. But again, like I said, wanted to take a moment just to lift up Restore's 24-hour hotline. What we'll be discussing tonight is heavy and can bring up many emotions. I wanted to be sure it's known that if anyone is triggered by this conversation and would like to talk tonight or really at any time about what they may be feeling or if they have any questions, to please just know that Restore's hotline is available. It is right on your screen. It is a 24-hour hotline. It's free and confidential, and there are highly trained staff and volunteer advocates available to listen, provide information, and help answer or find answers to questions that you may have. Also wanted to point out our social media. Sometimes calling the hotline may not feel like an ideal option. And so many times folks reach out to us through our social media. Or if you're just looking for more information, feel free to check out our website. There is a plethora of information about the services we offer, and all of the ways to get connected with us are located there as well. So just wanted to take a few moments just to acknowledge, just the heaviness of the conversation and let everyone know that there are supports available, not only throughout this conversation tonight, but tomorrow, next week, next month, at any time. So again, just wanted to take a few moments to talk about Restore Services. Restore Sexual Assault Services is a program of Planned Parenthood of Central and Western New York. We are part of the programs department, which is in the non-clinic side of Planned Parenthood. We are the New York State Department of Health certified rape crisis program for 5 counties. We're located in Monroe, Genesee, Livingston, Orleans, and Wyoming counties. And in Wyoming County, we are also the non-shelter domestic violence provider. As I mentioned before, all of our services are free, confidential, and available on a 24-hour basis to anyone that's ever been impacted by sexual violence, regardless of when the incident may have taken place. So we've had people reach out to us saying, I was raped 8 minutes ago and I don't know what to do, all the way to I'm 87 years old watching something on TV and it's bringing back memories from something that happened when I was younger and I've never talked to anyone about it. So really any time frame of when someone may have experienced a sexual trauma, Restore is here to help provide support. We also provide support to loved ones because we do understand and recognize that sexual violence does not only impact the survivor, but it impacts all those loved ones around them, whether it's parents, caregivers, loved ones, family members, friends. And so our services are open and available to everyone. A lot of our services revolve around supportive options. And so we do have counselors and advocates that are available to help with one-on-one counseling, with therapy services. We do advocacy and accompaniment through the medical process and through the legal or any type of restorative or justice process that a survivor may choose to pursue. And we can be there with them every single step of the way. So all the way from, disclosure to sentencing, or perhaps a restorative process, or maybe even a student conduct process, which Julia will talk a little bit about in just a little bit. We also offer lots of options and referrals because there may be other traumas that someone may have experienced that may be triggered by experiencing the sexual trauma. And so we want to make sure that everyone is connected with as many resources and supports as possible. As Kevin mentioned before, it is a partnership. It truly takes a village. And so many of us in the community pull together and work together to make sure that survivors feel supported in every way possible. Another service that we provide that's also free are educational workshops. And so we provide free trainings, free student workshops, whether it be at the little kiddo level or at the college level, or also have professional development opportunities too that we provide in the community, in the schools, at higher ed level, with other human service agencies, really to just spread the word and be sure that anyone working with individuals that may disclose sexual assault know that Restore is available for those support services. So with that said, we can transition to the next slide, or I will pass it over to Julia to talk a little bit more in depth about her specific role, which is the K through 12 advocate, and she'll take a bit of a deeper dive into what services she provides specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Mary Jo. So like I just said, my name is Julia. I am the K through 12 advocate we have here at Restore. So everything that I do, that education, that counseling, and that advocacy, that all takes place within the K through 12 school systems. So I can work with any student or any district that operates in any of the 5 counties that Restore serves. So I can be very busy sometimes, but some of the things I do can include education. Some of those educational programs that Mary Jo mentioned, I can go into schools and I can actually do some of our programming to our students. For example, just today, I was in a school district and I did a couple of programs about healthy and unhealthy relationships. And I can also do a lot of advocacy for students. So sometimes what I do is if a student comes to me and says, you know, this happened at school, I was assaulted, and I don't really know what it is I need, I can provide help either by providing them, you know, some different options that they have, which can include stuff like securing accommodations for their classes, like tutoring or extended deadlines. I can help them talk to the school about possibly getting a locker change or a class change. Basically, everything that I do kind of revolves around working with a student to sort out what exactly it is about their situation that leaves them feeling unsafe still, and then help that student and their family and talk with the school to figure out what it is that we can do and what needs to be done so that that student can feel safe again, so that they can return back to school and their classes so they can continue learning to the best of their ability. I also do some policy advocacy. So I have had schools call me and say, we just had a student come out and disclose sexual assault. Can you come out here and talk with them? And I've done that. And I've also had schools reach out to me and say, hey, we just had a student come out as trans, and we want to know how best to support this student in our school environment. What are some things that we can do? So I can kind of run the gamut of a lot of things dealing with gender discrimination and protections and Title IX as they relate to K through 12 schooling. And just to kind of close this introduction out, I do want to say that, you know, at Restore, we recognize that a lot of survivors come to us with their own unique traumas and their responses to that trauma. So they can be angry, they can be sad, they can be numb, they can just be tired. And more than that, we also recognize that a survivor's version of healing and accountability and justice may look different. So as we move forward into this conversation tonight and always, we do want to say that whatever a survivor's healing looks like, Restore is there to meet them where they are and help them move on from there to get where they want to go. And that's it for me with Restore. I was going to ask if there are any questions, but I can't see the chat.
So I hope everybody can hear me. Can the panelists give me a thumbs up if they can?
Yes.
That's good, because it appears as though my internet is unstable and I can't hear you right now. So I'm using the closed captions and guessing that Julia's done. But I will say thank you very much to Julia and to Mary Jo and to Restore for your partnership, but for this great information. Now, Rosen from Bavona. Deb, the screen and the floor is all yours.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for asking me to join this group. I am excited to talk to you about the way that we work together and what Bavona's particular role in this work is. And let's see if I can succeed in sharing my screen. How's that? All good? So Bavona Child Advocacy Center is a nonprofit organization which is located in the city of Rochester. We're on the corner of Mount Hope and Byron Streets, right in the South Wedge. And our role is to coordinate the multidisciplinary response to concerns of sexual abuse and sexual assault. And I will sort of use those two terms interchangeably, sexual abuse and sexual assault. They sort of mean different things, but I think in the life of the survivor, what they mean is trauma. And our role is to be here to respond to trauma and to support survivors and their caregivers in whatever ways they need. So I want to start just by grounding our understanding about child sexual abuse, that we're all thinking about the same dynamics and working from the same basic set of knowledge. And what we need to understand is that we know beyond any shadow of a doubt that about 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday. That has been established over the course of a couple of generations, different population studies. So child sexual abuse and sexual assault is a very common and widespread problem. And we also know that about 3/4 of those young people will not disclose their abuse to anyone for at least a year. And for many, many survivors, that's for a much greater period of time. About 20% or even greater of the children that we see at Bavona are under the age of 8, responding to concerns of sexual abuse. And the vast majority of those children are abused by somebody that they know well and they trust. I want to share too the very important point that fabricated reports of sexual abuse and sexual assault among children are extremely rare. It's estimated that only about 5%, between 4 and 8% of sexual abuse complaints are fabricated or are false. And so we're talking about a common problem that is experienced by children across demographics, that has profound impacts, and that is, when disclosed, is typically true. The purpose of a child advocacy center like Bavona is to coordinate the response to sexual abuse and physical abuse, so that children and their families are not forced to go between child protective services and law enforcement and medical providers and victim advocates and all those different providers, but rather for all of those services to be housed within one location in a highly coordinated fashion with professionals able to communicate with each other. So that's what we do at Bavona. And Bavona is unique in Monroe County. We're the only child advocacy center in Monroe County, but there are child advocacy centers all across the state and all across the country. There are actually about 900 child advocacy centers across the country. For the last several years, actually in a row, Bavona has served about 2,000 children every year. So that's a pretty big number. We're talking about the vast majority of those children being from Monroe County. We also do see some children from Wayne and Livingston counties, but for the most part, it's 2,000 children per year from Monroe County. And we do quite a bit of follow-up with those children and their caregivers to understand what their response to our services were. And what we've learned is that child advocacy center services are very, very helpful to children and families. About 98% of clients say that they benefit from that coordinated multidisciplinary approach. About 97% of caregivers say that the CAC approach was helpful to their children. So this is a model that's very widespread, that's seeing a large number of children and is very effective. The kinds of cases that we see at Bavona largely have to do with the sexual abuse of children, fondling, touching, dissemination of pornography, rape, and other sexual offenses. We also see children who have been seriously physically abused. So that's something that we also deal with here at Bavona. And we also work to support children who have witnessed domestic violence, homicide, or other serious community traumas. So the whole purpose of the organization is for us to be sort of a central repository of referrals about sexual abuse and sexual assault. That's why it's so important that our school community understand what we do, because schools are actually a significant source of referrals. We hear from school personnel all across the county all the time about concerns of sexual conduct in school and outside of school, school personnel that are trying to help initiate services for students who need support. We receive referrals from the medical community, from primary care physicians, pediatricians, specialty care providers, emergency rooms, et cetera. And we also receive referrals from law enforcement and child protective services. So it doesn't matter what door you're coming in through, you're going to get the same services if you contact Bavona. Bavona itself is actually quite a small organization. We're a staff of 24 people. We're really not a large organization, but the most important task that we have is to coordinate the collaborative efforts of 23 different partner organizations, Restore being one of them. So that includes all of the different jurisdictions of law enforcement, child protective services, medical providers, multiple mental health providers, victim advocacy organizations, all of the different disciplines that contribute to the investigation and response of child abuse are coordinated through Bavona's services. When a child is referred to the Child Advocacy Center, they can expect a certain sort of suite of services that are all provided here at Bavona by our different partner agencies. So a child will typically receive an interview, which is conducted by a trained forensic interviewer, support from a family advocate, a medical exam by a trained child abuse pediatrician, referrals for a wide variety of services, including mental health services that we provide on site, and support through the criminal justice process if that's something that the child and family are going to be continuing through. All of these services are provided here at Bavona in a very trauma-informed, developmentally appropriate, very child-friendly sort of setting. And all of these services are predicated on the joint investigation model. And the really important aspect of the joint investigation model is that a child only needs to go through that investigation once. They typically only need to be interviewed once about the trauma that they've endured. There's quite a bit of research that demonstrates children experience secondary trauma when they are asked to repeat their traumatic experiences over and over again. And so the entire structure of our organization is designed to avoid exactly that. We also provide education for the community, both to children and adults. We use our real bedrock curricula, our evidence-informed curricula, including the Monique Burr Foundation for Children's Child Safety Matters curriculum, which is used in multiple school districts for grades kindergarten through 8th grade. They do have a curriculum actually that goes through 12th grade. We're very pleased with the results of this curriculum. We offer that curriculum in a couple of different ways. We provide direct instruction where we actually go into the school and conduct classes with students and teachers. And we also provide a train the trainer model, which educates school staff in how to provide the curriculum themselves. We also are a provider of the Darkness to Light curriculum, which is an adult training module, which focuses on the prevalence and impacts of child sexual abuse, and in particular, what can be done within institutions to avoid child sexual abuse. We really like to provide these two curricula together because the material complements one another and creates a very holistic model for environmental safety. And I look forward to hearing your questions and your comments once we're done. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Deb. Much appreciated. It's now my pleasure to introduce Captain Mike Deshane from the Brighton Police Department.
Thank you, Dr. McGowan. Thank you for hosting this event. Thank you to the staff at the Brighton School District for being here, inviting the Brighton Police Department. We're honored to be here and attend. Hello to my partners from Restore in Bavona. I know most of you here, and we work well together for many years. These organizations are a key partner in the work we do. We're hand in hand with them throughout sexual assault investigations. I'd like to take just a few minutes, spend a little time explaining how these criminal investigations work, how a sex crime is reported, the avenues taken by the Brighton Police Department to get involved. As you know, crimes such as this can be reported through many different sources: family, friends, school staff. The victim themselves can come here. They can contact 911. Even through third persons, we do get involved in these investigations and vet out all the facts that are presented to us. Once the initial report has been taken, the investigation is turned over to our Criminal Investigative Division, which I oversee. We have 3 criminal investigators here in Brighton. All 3 are specially trained in sex crimes. They have advanced training. I would venture to guess some of the most advanced training in this county when it comes to police. The ultimate goal of all of our investigative staff is to basically empower the victim to gain their trust and reassurance, something that could have been taken from them prior to getting in touch with us. We utilize our essential partners at Restore and Bavona, along with Willow, to assist us with gaining that trust. It's a collaborative effort between all of us that brings a victim in here to discuss what took place. Our investigators are trained to take a victim-centered approach. What I mean by that is, to use the analogy, the victim operates the bus, and all of us, all the resources here are on that bus with that victim and offer the resources that we can. Another goal we have is to hope that the victim does not have to share this story more times than necessary. The way we do that is take preliminary facts to the sex case, the facts necessary for us to obtain physical evidence where time is of the essence in order to capture that evidence. Once we've managed to basically secure the scene of where this crime occurred, we reach out to Bavona and Restore to assist us. As far as presenting any more, I'm open to questions. Dr. McGowan, through the chat, if you have anything for me, I'm more than happy to
Thanks,
answer.
Mike.
Thank
you, Mike. I appreciate it. I'm sure there will be plenty, so we will come back to you. And again, thank you very much for your presentation and for the great partnership you have with us and in all matters, and particularly in this particular realm. I'd now like to introduce our three representatives from Brighton High School, and I believe Betsy Balling-Paddock is going to kick things off.
Yep, so I'm just going to share my screen. Oh boy, hold on. Oh, I have that thing at the top, so I'm struggling to. Are we okay with it like that, or do you want me to try to make it bigger? Sorry about that.
I think it's okay, but if you
It's
want,
okay.
If you go to slideshow and then,
No, I know how to do it. I just have the bar at the top. Sorry, that's covering it. But this is okay. I think that we're good if everyone else is okay with it. So first of all, Deb, Julia, Mary Jo, and Captain Desane, thank you for sharing and for all you do to care for our students. In terms of supporting students at BCSD, Jenny, Tom, and I will share with you what happens when we receive a report of an incident. And there are many ways in which that can occur. An incident can be reported by a student, a staff member, a counselor, an administrator, through the Safe Schools hotline, and through social media. Regardless of what is reported, it is then shared with administration, and that is when we start as a team to investigate. With each individual investigation, we collaborate every step of the way, and the administrators work closely with the counselors to find out as many facts as we possibly can. We interview students, we check social media, we call parents, we go to the end of the earth to find all that we can find. Sometimes these investigations take several days because we want to make sure that we have as many facts as possible. Depending on the circumstances of the investigation, be it sexual assault or sexual harassment, there might be an immediate call to the Brighton Police Department or Bavona for an intervention. We also know the importance of mitigating the spread of information and or rumors during an investigation so that we can protect not only the victim, but also the perpetrator. It's really important that I mention that because we have an obligation to support both as they are our students. It's important to remember that every case is very, very different. In some instances, administration will need to determine appropriate disciplinary action and restorative interventions for the parties that are involved. In addition to consulting with Bavona, Restore, and Willow, counselors will often consult with youth and family service, outside therapists, pediatricians, to ensure that they are offering the proper support to our victims. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jenny Vigiani, who will talk about social emotional considerations.
Thank you. Thanks, Betsy. Again, I'm one of the school counselors at Brighton High School and the coordinator for the department. Can you hear me okay, everybody? Okay. So in any situation, when someone is reporting trauma, our number one concern is the safety of all students involved. As we mentioned earlier, it is our obligation to support all parties involved, and we are highly sensitive to the mental health needs of those students. One way we do this is by ensuring that a trusted adult, usually a counselor, is with the student. This is important, especially when taking reports. We also make sure that we reach out to parents so they know that about the alleged incident and that we are doing all we can to support their child. It is important to note that throughout the process, we are regularly checking in on the student's mental health. Depending on what the student reports about the state of their mental health, we will determine how to proceed. We want to ensure that they are both physically and mentally safe. We want to make sure that they feel safe to go home. Do they need further evaluation by a mental health professional in the community? Is school a safe place for them? If it's not safe or doesn't feel safe, what action do we need to take to ensure that they feel safe? We continue to follow up with all parties involved day in, day out, for as long as it takes for everyone to feel comfortable, to feel heard, and to know that we are here to support them as a school staff. And I believe Dr. Hall is going to take the next couple of slides to share with you some of the ideas that we have moving forward.
Thank you, everybody. And it's we've worked with all of the agencies that are here tonight. And Restore has presented at the high school for several years during our Link Crew meetings. So there's a lot of information given to our students every year. But through the events of the last few weeks, with things coming to light, certainly we can always do more and do better. So as we work through with many of our students, families, over the last several weeks, we actually collaborated together on several of these interventions that many of these are already in place, and or we will be pursuing them come summertime and working with our partners that are here on the screen. And as Mike Desane mentioned, we are collaborative partners with the Brighton Police Department, Bavona, Willow, and Restore. Depending on the situations and the kids we're working with, we will all be collaborating as much as possible and sharing information wherever possible. One of the things we want to do for next school year is to actually bring in, typically right now, Restore comes in during our freshman Link Crew orientations that we have in the fall. And they do a presentation on healthy, unhealthy relationships and potentially when relationships turn abusive. But we want to offer up a partnership together even more. We're bringing in resources with their professional staff, 1 to 4 flex periods per month. Flex is a time when every student is free. Again, maybe one month it's one time, maybe another month we have some sort of presentation every week. But we have a flex period every day of the cycle in between 4th and 5th period. And to have someone come and present to our students, have time for students to ask questions. We certainly publicize the event ahead of time. And then even if Restore, Willow, or Bavona will allow for this, to have students who might want to talk with them more confidentially to set up a time to meet with them right at school. So that's something we want to partner with and begin next school year. We also wanted to start actively publicizing the various agencies, Restore, Willow, Bavona, and the Brighton Police, that students can turn to if they want to not work with the school or would rather not share this incident, personal situation with the school because they want to keep school separate, or maybe it is relating to the school. So they want to reach out to those professional agencies. I think we've done a great job when it comes to school safety, and because of student input over the years, we've actually hung many signs in the building. They're on every floor. If you see something, say something. When it comes to school threats or violence, or social emotional issues, or somebody who might be a threat to themselves or others. And we've promoted, if you see something, say something, as a slogan for us that we take it seriously. The number for the Safe Schools Helpline is there, posted around the building. But as we took a look of the issues in the last 2 weeks again, we haven't publicized the numbers and the contact information for agencies like Restore, Willow, and Bavona. So that is something we're actively doing. And in fact, on number 3 there, the bullet, and maybe after Betsy, I can share my screen and I'll share the flyer. But we've actually now, every single bathroom in our building, female, male, now has a sign in the bathroom basically saying, do you need help? And then it lists all the different agencies that you can contact regarding sexual harassment or assault specifically. We've also created small cards that are in all the counseling offices, attendance offices, main offices, administrative offices that kids could pick up, or even adults along the way if they wanted a resource. So that's new, but that's in place. We're also talking about where in our curriculum with health class, Link Crew, counseling seminars where we already discuss sexual harassment, forcible touching, and assault. talking to students more about that, and whether we're bringing in the experts like Restore, Willow, Bavona, or even the Brighton Police, or we're providing that information, but doing it more often with our students as teenagers in the building, and through our normal DASA presentations that we do every year, cyberbullying, social media, school threats, adding more of this information and the contact information to who to go to if you are a victim or you need to discuss something that may have happened to you and you don't know, but you're not comfortable with what happened. Also, through our counseling seminar, students wanted more time to be able to just discuss issues when these sort of things arise. We do have some, unfortunately this year, we don't have our counseling groups running like we typically do because of COVID, but that's something we'll be bringing it back again next year, and that's always an opportunity for our kids to have a conversation. Next slide, Betsy. All right. And one of the things that has come up also in the last few weeks, and either Dr. McGowan or I can address it if questions come up, but just providing clear understanding. I think there was some misinformation that was out in the student community, maybe in the parent community, about what the schools can and cannot do when it comes to accusations or alleged assaults, harassment, that sort of thing. We certainly have a lot of board policy. We have a lot of state laws and education laws that we have to follow. But there are also laws that protect minors and school-age children who have a right to come to school. And I think by having the discussions and conversations we have in the last few weeks, we've cleared up a lot of that with students, but certainly there's more we can do. Again, I think having misunderstandings and not being on the same page, now that we are working collaboratively more with our students who've been really promoting action in the last several weeks, I think we're in a much better place to work together instead of being adversaries. So we want to work together with our students and our community and agencies, but there's certainly school rules and policies that students might not understand when it comes to a school environment and a student who may have done something to another student. Maybe there's consequences. All of that is protected. It's not something we just can broadcast or even share with other families. It is private information, but let's say there is some sort of action taken and then all of a sudden that student eventually is back in school and appearing that we've allowed this person who perpetrated an incident back in with the potential victim. And even court orders that might say there's an order of protection against somebody, we would need to take that student in, and typically court orders we receive say, these students are going to be in the building together and they're certainly going to be potentially in close quarters, but we will do everything we can to work with the families to make sure they're not in the same classes. Maybe their classes are even on different ends of the building, trying to keep them separated at different times of the day. We've done that over the course of many years in working with issues where these serious things come up. And finally, just creating, again, that if you see something, say something culture when it comes to threats and violence to the school, but also when it comes to sexual assault and violence too, just like we've done with bullying. And this summer, our last thing that we want to do is set up a time with Restore Bavona, the folks who are here on the screen with us tonight, to discuss certain case studies that we've experienced over the years and maybe have worked with them on, but to kind of throw those out there, obviously being confidential and protecting the names of people involved, but to run through those cases and make sure that, according to the professionals who deal with this day in, day out, we are working together on these issues and we can pick each other's brains and work together to make it even better for our students who come to Brighton High School every day. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hall, Mrs. Vigiani, Mrs. Spelling-Paddock, and everybody else. who had presented previously. I can't tell you again how much we appreciate it. I know I thanked you in between each and don't want to, continue to just be so enthusiastically grateful, but I want you to understand how much this partnership means to us and to our children, and for taking the time to present this information tonight. So we're now at a point in the evening where we can answer some questions and have a panel discussion as well. Just encourage people, again, if you have questions about a specific situation that could identify somebody individually, we would ask you to use the chat that's only visible to those that are panelists and are obviously confidential in that circumstance. And if you have additional input, we'll pause in one moment for you to be able to enter information into the exchange. The link is in the chat for those of you that are on Zoom, and I'll share my screen for everyone else to be able to utilize the QR code. And this would be for feedback for us so that we can learn, we can grow and improve as a school system as well. That would be the QR code, or if you go to tejoin.com and enter that 9-digit code 107506894, you're able to enter that feedback. And that's really answering the question, what more can we be doing? What are your suggestions, your thoughts, your concerns, your general questions? Hoping that they're not identifiable or specific to a Brighton situation that could be confidential to somebody else, and ask you to be respectful of that. And I will just reiterate to Dr. Hall's point there at the end regarding next steps for us in our school district, and certainly next steps that have been informed by events over the past couple of weeks locally as well involving another school district. Regarding both sexual abuse and sexual assault, we do have a wide variety of policies in place. We have a code of conduct, but we would like to spend a lot of time this summer, that think time, the opportunity for us to re-examine what we do, our practices and our policies, understanding if there are ways we can improve upon those, to look at, those things that are on paper and the practices we know that are happening. And then there's two other kind of spokes to this wheel, I would describe them as. One is the education of children, and the other is the education of adults. In terms of the education of children at all levels, K through 12, what exactly are we currently doing, and what should we be doing, and how can we improve our practice in terms of awareness and understanding, and helping children be proactive in this situation, and learn about, at their developmental level, learn about what they need to with regard to this as a preventative measure. Again, both in terms of protecting children in abuse situations, but also proactive relative to sexual assault, to prevent it from happening, but also for kids to understand what's available to them and how we can support them in that. And then the next aspect would be the education of adults, and how are we as adults recognizing signs and symptoms? What are we doing to protect children, and what more can we do? And learning that way too. And again, working with our partners here on the screen and many others to engage in that conversation more fully. So again, another reminder, if there are comments in the chat or through the thought exchange, we're happy to address those. I'm not seeing any yet, and that's all right if people would prefer not to. But that would be the next portion of the evening, would be in the chat, again, either or in the exchange. I'm going to set the clock there on the exchange. That will count down about 4 minutes if you'd like to enter any thoughts. And we'll be quiet and give you some quiet think time to do that, and then address those with the panel following that. All right. We have two comments in the exchange, and we don't have any chat questions. That's all right. I will tell people that the exchange link will go out in our Friday e-news, along with a link to this recording and the slide decks that were utilized, so that people have all of the information at their fingertips and can continue to offer us suggestions. The first is a compliment regarding responsiveness to this delicate situation. We appreciate that. Thank you. We're glad to be, not glad to be in the midst of a situation that clearly is hurtful and victims, but glad to be supportive, helpful, and caring, and of use, which everybody here is, of course, dedicated to being of use to others. The next comment was about how do schools explicitly teach the idea of consent at different levels from K through 12? Are examples and modeling used? Betsy or Jenny, are you able to address that specifically?
Betsy, maybe you can for the lower levels. I believe they're using second steps to address, and I can't be certain, but we are using LINK, which is our 9th grade mentoring program, to address those topics along with our seminars. But what Tom was alluding to in his last slide is we really feel like we need to do more and get a little bit more into the weeds on specifics. So we are definitely going to be adding some more at this is, I'm sorry, the 9-12 level.
I can speak to K2. I had a conversation the other day with their mental health staff, and in their second step lessons, they will be throughout the month of April on safety and respecting their bodies. This is something that they actually have been doing for years. And they, the different lessons will be around recognizing safe and unsafe situations, identifying safe or unsafe touches, identifying which parts on their body are private, and then also, and I think this is so important, identifying safe adults that they can go to and talk to.
Thanks to both of you. Deb, Julia, Mary Jo, any perspective on some best practices that are out there in that way that we can learn from too, or that we should be considering that you're aware of?
Sure. So we really are pretty committed to a curriculum that I referenced earlier called Child Safety Matters. It's called Teen Safety Matters for older students. And what this curriculum does is it introduces 5 basic safety rules that are applied beginning in kindergarten and then travel all the way up the sort of developmental continuum all the way through high school, and are adapted developmentally and sort of expressed developmentally in ways that are meaningful to kids of certain ages. And the basic gist of that curriculum is similar to what Betsy just described. We talk about identifying safe adults. We talk about the importance of speaking up for oneself. We talk about the importance of body autonomy, and we talk about the importance of not blaming and not shaming. And woven through all of that is the message about consent and body autonomy. And that applies not just to sexual situations, but to other interpersonal situations that could include coercion or aggression that kids need to be aware of. And I think what you really want to look for is a curriculum that comprehensively sort of gets its arms around all of those concepts in ways that will be very meaningful and impactful for kids, no matter what their ages are.
Thanks, Deb. Julie, did you want to speak to that as well?
I was going to, yeah. Thank you so much, Deb. I was just thinking we have a program called Safe Touches that sounds very similar to what you're doing. So in terms of best practices, at least it seems like we're of the same mind there when it comes to that particular programming. But I was also thinking about our education that we offer for our secondary ed students, so mostly 9 through 12. And we do have a program that talks about sexual assault and sexual harassment and consent. And we certainly talk about that, and boundaries, but we also start to pick apart the different mental and social and societal factors that go into our attitudes about sexual assault and gender roles or gender identity and rape culture. So it's an opportunity not only to stand up and talk to the students and say, this is the definition of consent, this is sexual harassment or an assault, don't do that, please. But to really engage the students' minds and meet them kind of where they are in their understanding of how dating and relationships are supposed to work, and reinforce the thoughts that they have that are healthy, and start to kind of unlearn and pick apart the parts that may be unhealthy.
Thank you, Julia. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
One more comment that was here, maybe more small group discussions and real world type examples or even role play. When faced with sexual assault, harassment in person, it can be very different than the presentations heard in school, i.e. knew what to do but couldn't. Any of those kinds of discussions happening, Jenny, perhaps in groups or in seminar, et cetera, at Brighton High School? Or Tom, would you like to speak to that?
The conversations that we are able to facilitate in our small groups, and for those who are on here who aren't familiar with the high school's groups, they're voluntary. They are usually a girls group and a boys group for both, for all grade levels. And the participants, again, they volunteer to be a part of the group, but once they commit, we ask that they attend regularly to keep the group, I guess, to keep the group going in a meaningful way. And often in those groups, there are a lot of things that are revealed, and we are able to process and discuss many different topics. And to the point, role play, and often it's peers saying, hey, well, what if you said this, or what if you did this? Have you tried that? Let's test it out. If this person comes up to you and says this or does this, this is what you could say, or that's not okay. You need to tell somebody. So situations like that occur pretty regularly. Seminar is a little bit different because often the topics of our seminar is college and career based. We have added social emotional well-being curriculum to our seminars in the past couple of years, a lot about stress and anxiety and how to manage that at school, but also topics like sexual harassment have also been added, but role playing hasn't taken place in there. So that is something that we do, that is part of the summer work that we want to do with Bavona, Restore, and Willow, is have some case studies and say, hey, this happened, a student reported this, this is how we handled it. What would you do differently? How could we be better at it? Where do we need to look for other resources, and how do we implement that into our counseling curriculum?
I'll just add, Dr. McGowan, that we have over the years revised, since 2012, when DASA came into being as a law, Dignity for All Students Act, we've added to that presentation, it's mandatory that we do every year, but we've tried to make it as interactive with the students as possible. Early on, it was much more just talking at them, a lot of information, facts, these are the laws and rules. But actually, thanks to Ms. Jacob, who's I think attendee on this tonight, she's assistant principal at the high school. We developed, maybe 4 years ago, we started to come up with, we'd present information, and then on the slide, it would say, what would you do? Kind of like that old TV show, you're going into a restaurant or something and you see something happening and they want to say, well, what would you do if you were the person watching? So we kind of play the same thing, a role play. Here's the situation. And we've added a lot of things about sexting in those presentations, drug and alcohol use, or derogatory, discriminatory language or physical behavior directed at another student. And we could easily, I think, with the help of Restore and Bavona, come up with maybe a few situations that we could also add that and share those with the students when we do those presentations, because we do get into forcible touching and consent a little bit in terms of our presentations, but it's been more geared towards bullying, cyberbullying, and social media sexting type things. But I could see us easily adding that to our start with the role plays.
Great. Thanks very much to both of you. So that really does it for the questions in the exchange currently and questions in the chat. I just would like to thank again our participants and for those insightful answers to the questions. And I want to share one more time the contact information for folks, for anybody here who's on the screen. And of course, we've sent out in the last couple of e-news and in the announcement for this program, contact information, hotline numbers, etc. That will go home again Friday in our e-news with a follow-up to this conversation. Once again, from Restore, Mary Jo Marino, Julie DeLuca, thank you. Deb Rosen from Bavona, thank you so much. Mike DeShane from the Brighton Police Department, thank you. Jenny Vigiani, Betsy Balling, Paddock, and Tom Hall from Brighton High School. Can't tell you how much we appreciate everybody participating this evening, all of your feedback and the great information for our community and all that you do to love and support our children and our community overall. Thanks very much, everybody. We enjoyed having this conversation with you. Please reach out if we can help, and have a great evening.
This has been a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District.